Welcome to this EMSWeb training session. In this session, we're going to cover the available reports and exports that can be made within EMSWeb. There are a variety of ways to get information out of EMSWeb. There are pre-made reports that you can run from various tables within EMSWeb, and there are also exports that you can run. In addition, the user can create custom-made queries on the database itself, templates for how they want to export the information to Excel, as well as tables and charts that they can make. So for each one of these, we're going to run through some examples. We're going to start with the Audit Inspection tab. So on every table, we have this filter function and we have this export function. And so on the filter, you can filter what is displayed in the table. So for example, we can look for external environmental audits only, and look for only the open ones. Okay, so then we have in this table all of the open external environmental audits. And then we can use the export icon, and the default export will export whatever information is shown in that table and export it to Excel. So if I open that up, and we'll wait a moment for Excel to open up, then you can see that we have the title, type, lead auditor, all of the same columns that were in the table showing up now on the Excel export. And so that allows the user to filter and export the information from each table into Excel, where they can save it and then do whatever they want with that information. Now, if you want to use columns that are not found within this table, then you can create a custom-made template which will show up on the export. There are already some already made, such as the audit dump and the standard audit template, and that pretty much provides you with all of the database fields that are related to the audit. So if we do this same export, and open it up in Excel, you'll see that now there are a whole lot more additional fields that can be exported and related to the specific audit. So this is available under all of the tables, finding, observations, audits, assigned checklists. Basically, if the information is displayed in the table, you can filter and export it. So that enables the user to really dump out all of the raw data and save it to their hard drive, where they can further manipulate the data as desired. In addition, we have various reports that are also available. So for example, if I open up a example audit, then I can show you an example of some pre-made or canned reports. So again, if we look at this export function, we can see that we can export the completed checklists that belong to this audit to PDF. We can export a summary of the findings that was made primarily for the external audit out brief. We can create a POAM report, and we can also generate the draft external audit report in either Word or PDF. And so there are also specific reports that are available for the finding, so for a variety of purposes. So you can get just the compliance deficiencies, the EMS nonconformances, everything that belongs to the external audit. You can get a finding POAM report. And this comes in different versions. One where the milestones, each milestone is on a separate row, or we can have all of the milestones included in a single row. We have other reports that come out in a formatted Word, a finding POAM report that was created by the EMSWeb Change Control Board. So, for example, if I open that up, that's going to generate a pretty lengthy Word document because I didn't filter out to get a smaller set of findings. So this is going to go through all of the findings. So you can see this is a over 1.4 megs document size. But let's take a look at it. So this finding and POAM report was generated from a Word template document, and then we merged in all of the relevant fields into the right areas. And so here you can look at all of the important information related to the finding, and then you can also see the plan of action and milestones and the status of all of the milestones. And then it does that for each one of the findings that was in the table. And so you can see this is a very lengthy document. So if you do have a need for a specific report to be made, you can request it under Get Support. If you have a Word template that you want to be populated with information, like that Finding POAM report, you can also send that through Get Support and request that for custom-made reports to be made for your installation or region. So that's one type of reports and exports that can be made. And then we come to the custom-made queries and templates and tables. And that's where the user can tap directly into the database tables and pull out information. So they can create queries for very specific purposes. So, for example, if I go to, let's see, the queries. So I'm going to look at the Queries tab, and this is located under the Reporting tab. And so each installation can create specific queries. And so if I click on New Custom Query, first it's going to ask me what data class or category of information that I'm looking to query. So, for example, you can query on findings or audits or POAMs or practices. Basically, all information in EMSWeb is grouped into these data class fields. And so suppose I want to look for findings. And then this is pretty much going through a logic exercise in trying to define what data fields you're looking for and what criteria you want to put onto it. So for example, if I want to look for information that belongs to an organization which contains the name of Atlantis, okay? So that way it's restricted to this area of Naval Station Atlantis and doesn't include any children. Let's say I want to look for finding numbers that contain the number 2018. Okay, so I can output this to the grid. So if I just run the query as is, it's going to query the database table and then come back, okay, here are the results. There were 3 finding numbers that contain 2018 in the finding number, and then here's the finding name. So you can create queries with as many different criteria that you want. If you're really versed with how logic works, you can do advanced grouping it on all of these criteria. So you don't have to be limited to 1 and 2 and have every criteria be true. You can do something like, say, 1 and 2 or 3 and 4. You know, if you have that, if you have a lot of different criteria. You can also output this to an export, and these are all different templates that you can define. So a template is basically saying, I want this export to be in Excel and contain all of the fields, all of these defined fields in the export. So if I take like the standard finding template and I run the same query, okay, oops, let me change that back. So now if I run the query, but now I just want to use this standard finding template. So now it's going to give me an Excel output. And when the Excel opens up, you'll see that it contains the same 3 records, but now it contains a lot more fields to it. So this is basically all of the fields that are related to that finding. So you can create a specific template that includes just the fields that you want in it. You can save the query so that you can use it over and over again. You can change the scope, so you can say this query is for myself only, so it's only visible to myself and only I can run that query. Or I can make this query available to everybody at my organization, and so everyone can run it. Or I can make it available to everyone at my installation and all of the children organizations. So if you're at the region, you can make a query and share it with everybody at your installations. Okay. There is also another query that I want to show you as an example. and that's this one, show major findings in time frame. So this also belongs to the finding data class. So I'm going to look for major findings. So the category contains major or equals major. And then this time, I'm going to say the data is observed is either greater than a value and less than a specific value. But I've left these blank and I've checked the box under parameter value. And so what this is going to do is when I run the query, it's going to ask the user, what time frame do you want to run this query from? And then it's going to output the information with these specific columns in a grid value. So if I run this query, oops. Let me try that again. So I want to run this query from the query table. So here's my show major findings and time frame, and I click on this run icon. So now it's going to come up and say, okay, what time date observed greater than you want. So I'm going to choose 1/1/2015 and cover to 1/1/2019. So then it's going to run this query and give me all of the major findings at Naval Station Atlantis within that specific time period. Okay, and it outputs it with the form that I specified. So under templates and exports, you can define what export template that you want. So you do that under the same process as creating a new query. You first define the data class, and then you pick what fields you want to be shown. For example, if I use, let's take a look at a root cause report that I created for one reason or another. You can see that here are all of the data fields that I defined. So if I click into this, you can see this is the organization data field. Now, these names are the ones that the programmer uses, so it may not be exactly appropriate for an output for a different audience. So what you can do is you can put in a different caption that will be used as the header in Excel. So for example, instead of organization, you might want to put installation name or something more appropriate that is more clear to the user. You can also move these around by just hovering over this icon and drag and holding. So then you can just move it up or down. So it makes it real easy. And then remove will get rid of it and add a field or add in another data field. So then once you save this template, then it's available for use under any queries that use that finding data class, or it's also available on the finding tables when you export the information. Also, once you create your queries and queries, you can use them in charts and tables as well. So for example, if I go to charts, here's an example chart that I made. It happens to be a pie chart. If I run it, it's going to ask me, okay, what finding number do I want? So I'm going to look for those same ones that contained 2018. And then it comes up with a pie chart with, how many of what percentage are policy, what percentage are noteworthy practices. If I go ahead and look at the query, so let me bring up the edit view of it. Whoops, templates charts I wanted to go to. So when you create or edit a chart, again, you're going to start with defining the data class. In this case, it was finding. Gave it a name. I can choose what kind of chart, a pie, column, or bar chart. Give it a title that's going to be displayed on it. The data source. So this is the name of the query that I made that belongs to the same data class. You can share it with child organizations if you want. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to break it down by the category. So every different type of finding that meets that the query returns, for every category is going to be a pie slice, and then the value is just I'm going to count them up. So the other things I can do is sum the values. If the property is a number, I can sum, average, and do a percentage. Otherwise, I can just count the number of items in that category. So I can break down the category by any field within the finding that I wanted to. So I could just as easily break it down by media, or by status, or by finding type. So it's all possible within that number. You can, by default, if there are no queries that return that specific category value, then it omits it. But if you do want it to be displayed like in a column chart, and you want the results to be displayed with 0, you can manually add them in. You can define the chart size and either show the data point labels or not, and you can have the percentage and count tags reversed. So by default, it'll show the percentage, and then if you hover over it, it'll show the exact number, or you can do it the reverse way. And then columns have different options. So here you can change the title, the value of the titles, change the label, if that's text, if the text label is going horizontal or vertical or diagonal. And so you have a lot of the common choices when creating a column or a bar chart. Okay, so charts tend to be pretty simple. Tables get a little more complex. So here, the easiest thing to do is give you an example. So here, I'm breaking out all of the major findings using that query I looked at before. And I'm going to break it down by media and show the progress of those major findings. So when I run it, so you can see that it breaks down all of the media categories, and then it shows me the number of majors in each category and the poem progress. And then I have another test table here. So here it's asking me for what audit inspection type I want to look at. So I want to look at external environmental audits, and the category contains majors. Oh, and it didn't return any for that one. So if I look at how you construct an individual table, the idea is that you can break down the break down the query by a specific category. In this case, it was media. So what I'm doing then is on the right side column, I have all of the medias defined. And then I can define what information shows up in each specific column. So I created one to show the majors, where I just count the number returned by a query that showed the majors. And then I showed the POAM progress by averaging the POAM progress for each one of the majors. So you can create as many columns as you want. Under charts and tables, we have additional examples. So we'll wait for that to pop up. And you click on Chart and Table menu. And so here we have some custom-made tables. So it looks a little fancier. So here, this one is all of the findings broken down by responsible party. So here are all of the responsible parties that belong to Naval Station Atlantis, how many open findings belong to each one, and then we have different columns for the ones that have been closed in the last 30 days, findings that were not responded to, either closed or POAM. And so we can create custom tables as well. So to create the queries and templates, export templates, charts, and tables, you have to be, much more well-versed either with creating criteria or queries in another system like, Excel or a database or something like that. For the casual user, it's probably out of scope for them. But if you do want a specific table or query created, you can always request it by going to the Get Support function.